All right, guys, let's talk about subframe install. This is a 2020 450R. It's going to be very similar to the 2017 and up. Obviously, this one has the electric start with the battery. So let's just do a quick rundown of where everything goes on this machine. So first thing you're going to do, you're going to bolt your subframe on using the factory bolt locations. Now, what I like to do is actually hang the exhaust cans after cutting the mid pipes. This is the one mod you really have to do to get the subframe where it needs to be and get everything lined up. Obviously, this exhaust was originally designed for a dirt bike, so it was angled up higher. So we quite simply cut them off here and make new mid pipes. So by doing that, we mount it here, get the can where you want it. You're gonna line up both cans. I usually measure off the floor, make sure the bike is level, make sure you got equal air pressure in each tire. And after that, you're gonna cut your extension pipes. So I'll insert a couple pictures here so you can see how we do it. It's real simple. Make sure you have stainless, make sure you have somebody that can actually TIG weld the stainless to the stainless pipe. You don't want any corrosion or any pinholes in your welds. So we like to TIG weld and take our time, make it as clean as we can make it. So once that's on there, that's really pretty much that. It doesn't get any simpler than that. I recommend having a professional do your exhaust work if you are doing it, just for the strength of it too. You don't want to have any cracks. But anyway, next thing, so you're gonna have your rear seat latch. We just came up with a new design. If you have the older one that's taller, you do have to trim this part down. But moving forward, we're going to be shipping out these lower brackets. If you want to upgrade to this, just let me know. And if you did receive an older one, no problem, we'll switch it out with the new one. So this allows us to keep the full length on the seat rubbers. This is a OEM seat latch, goes in the OEM position. These are our fender brackets. So after we get the battery box mounted, you can see how we have that with the battery box strap. Once that's on and this is on, leave these bolts loose because these are actually your fender brackets. Now you're gonna be moving these around. They move in and out and they're slotted this way too. So you're gonna do that once the fenders are on and once you're getting the trimming going. So once that's installed, you're gonna put your grab bar on. Intake hanger bracket. We are working on a box for these soon, but for right now, we are still running this with the outerwear. We have our intake. Now you're gonna slide your seat grommets onto the posts, put a little grease on there. I actually like to put a little coating of grease on the outside because I found sliding the seat on, it actually does stick to these. We have a very, very tight tolerance, so it's gonna aid in sliding your seat on too. These holes on this new bracket are slotted. We're gonna be able to move this seat bracket back and forth to actually fine tune your seat fitment. Again, if you want to upgrade to this one, let me know. Free of charge, we'll swap it out with you. All right, guys, so electrical. We try to keep as clean as possible as we can. We created this bracket here. I'll also insert a couple pictures of that in a different mounting position. But you're basically going to reuse your stock mount for your CDI. You're going to bolt that to our bracket. You also fit the regulator in there. And there's just enough room for the plug to fit without any bending on it. This is your other bracket here that's like an L shape, so that goes down and over, and it holds that, holds the OEM grommet real nice. And again, here's sorry if I'm bouncing around, but I'm trying to make sure I'm covering everything. So here's your intake sensor. I like to put a little bit of silicone on the O-ring and then use the supplied hardware and definitely red Loctite those in. That clips into there. So let's take a walk around. This is a ground wire. Goes to the negative. That's going to ground out to your motor. So here's your starter solenoid. You can see this factory bracket actually bolts there, and there's a little hole on the bracket for it to locate to. There's just enough room to clear that resi. So just be really careful installing that. Make sure everything's lined up right. This would be your positive cable. And again, we try to reuse the OEM wires on this. We do make our own longer ground wire, but I recommend just routing it like that. Make sure it's not too tight. You can line that right up to the positive post. Of course, as you've seen in the other videos, these are your fender mounts. So it's pretty straightforward install. You can see how our bracket actually just goes right down to the 2 gas tank mounts. Right there and there. And again, I'll insert some more pictures of that so you can see a couple different views of how this bracket goes together. You can see how the L-shaped bracket bolts to the CDI mount that we created. And I guess lastly, seat post relocator. This allows the ATV seat to actually slip onto there, as you can see right here. So it has a wider flange on it so the seat can actually attach to it. The only mod you really have to do is a small hole right here, just so that that bolt will thread to there. Now when you're drilling this, be extremely careful. I like to put a piece of steel behind it as I'm drilling that, and definitely center punch it before you start drilling, and just be really careful. Now this bracket is threaded, so you're gonna take the threaded sleeve off of here. This is now gonna go underneath the plastic, and you're gonna use the threads that are on this to pinch the bottom of this bracket against this tank cover all the way to this bracket. So that locks it right in. I do recommend using Loctite on everything, just on all your nuts. Just be really careful. Make sure you use a drop of Loctite. Things are going to loosen up. Always double check everything before you ride. Make sure everything's good to go. That's pretty much it, guys, for the subframe. If you have any questions, shoot me an email, bvctrikes@gmail.com. I will try my best to explain everything. I'm trying to get some updated videos here for these newer machines. Again, this will cover pretty much 17 and up. So right now 17 to 20 is what it's going to cover. Another shot of the exhaust. So everything is just kind of finger tight right now. We're getting our location where we want it. You can adjust the angle of your head pipe too. Just remember that. So if you did pull it off the bike, it's okay to move it around a little bit. Make sure you're not rubbing on your engine. Make sure you're not rubbing on your frame. These do fit a little tighter than the OEM one, but everything does fit nice. So again, after you have your can set, pretty much just make your mid pipe. So we actually cut the insert off of here. So there is gonna be the original insert that goes into there, slipped into here, and we're just gonna literally bridge the gap with two mid pipes. Here's a shot of the piece that actually would have been cut off. Now it is going to be a little bit different if you're running the stock exhaust, but this would be the Yoshimura stainless exhaust. So that's that piece right there. This originally would have been welded right here. So you can see I cut it right along the weld. We are going to clean this up, remove any of the scaling on there, and we're going to actually sandblast it before we go to weld the new pipe in. But you're just simply going to slide that into there, right where it goes, and you're gonna make that mid pipe. So it's okay to play around with both sides. Just get your exhaust can. I can't move that because it's tight, but it's okay to move this up or down to better line these up. Just remember that if you're gonna adjust the angle of one, make sure it matches the other side. And again, make sure your floor is level when you're measuring from the floor to a point on the exhaust can that's the same on each of them. You can go with the rivet hole, you can go with the top of the end cap. And another tip, if you have the carbon end caps, throw some tape on it while you're working on it, because chances are you will scratch it up. And these are different diameters on each side. We like to use mcmaster.com to order our material. They've been real good to us. Usually it's next day shipping. So if it's stainless, go with stainless material. And again, these are different diameters, so get out your caliper and just measure your diameters on there before you go ordering material. Another thing to pay attention to, make sure you got clearance on your chain roller right here. as you go with aftermarket exhausts, they generally get larger in diameter. So just, again, pay attention to that gap right there. You don't want to have any melted chain rollers. If you have to and you can't get it where you want it because of the angle, we have put smaller chain rollers, but generally if you take your time, you can make that work. Another mod we do on our subframes, we actually extend the vent hose. We're not running it to the intake anymore, so we extend the head vent hose right down to the ground. There's no reason to have this go back to your intake. That's just an emissions thing. Okay guys, let's talk foot pegs. Our foot pegs do pivot. They're designed to use your factory spring, pin, and clip. Now, we do our best to build these. Again, they are hand fabricated, so we do our best to build these as straight as possible. What we have been doing, because I've seen some other pegs on the market where they actually look droopy after one ride. So our way to fix that was we leave this little stopper right here, and that's what pushes against your peg bracket inside there. We left it a little bit long, so when you get the pegs, they're actually going to be kicked back slightly like this. I do this because some guys like them kicked up, some guys want them flat, and again, I don't want the droopy pegs that hang forward. So what we do is, like I said, we send it with a little bit long of material on there. So all you have to do when you go to test fit these, just leave your spring out, slide your pin in, stick it into the frame, and just double check the angle of your peg. If you want to drop it down more, you just simply grind the end of that off. You can actually take a hand file and just knock the edge down a little bit. And I only recommend going a little bit at a time. You don't want to take a lot of material off and then end up with a droopy peg. So I recommend setting them up so they're kicked up slightly and then riding with it and make sure they stay where they want to be. If you see it drooping, you can always add a little bit of weld back on there if you have to, but I'm just real anal about keeping these pegs flat. And again, a little bit of kick-up's okay. That is why we add this on here, but you never want your peg droop down. That's not good. Just a recipe for a disaster and having your foot slide off. Here's another close-up shot. You can see the stock pin with the washer and the clip. Of course, the factory spring. Let's talk triple clamps. So here we are. We have our triple clamps installed. We do have a video on installing these, but I want to go into more detail for the 2020 450R. Always double check your fitment of your clamp rubbing your shroud. If you have bare clamps, it's really not a big deal. If you have powder coat, and again, that barely grazes it, but we're actually going to go in and we're going to trim this right here. Same thing with the radiator guard. We're just going to knock a little bit off of there just for the clearance. And we honestly put these as far back as they can go for steering. We don't want this thing steering like a school bus. However, we let it go as far back as we can with minor trimming all the way to the steering stop. And when you install these steering stops onto the triples, dabble red Loctite goes a long way. These are designed so if you get in a wreck, they'll break off. You pull the stud out and replace the bolt. If you're running our headlight, you are going to be drilling holes, top and bottom. Now, these headlight frames are hand fabricated, which is why we don't offer these pre-drilled because they do vary slightly. We are going to change in the future. We're going to be starting to add holes, but for now, they all have to be hand drilled after for the headlights. Same deal for our front number plate mount. Now, we were on the Husky plate, as you can see in our pictures. You just literally 2 holes right here. You'll have your mount hang down. And then there's also a video online about how to do the plastic trimming and all the install. We're going to have the 2 holes on the fenders. So these clamps are drilled for 350X or 200X front fenders. If you order a 250R clamp, it is done for the 250R, but for this machine, 350X and 200X bolt pattern at this time. A lot of guys comment about brake line routing. We run our clamps as absolutely skinny as possible while still having caliper clearance. We do this for axle strength. That's the only reason we do this. A lot of guys like the fatter look. It does look cool. However, we don't like to see the big gaps on each side of the fender, so we run these as tight as possible. That being said, you can run your brake line on the inside Now, if you ever have an issue with this moving, or you get a stick caught in there or a rock, it is gonna snag the line. So we like to leave a little bit of clearance there, and you can just run your brake line out here. And you can hold your brake line where you want it and snug the banjo bolt. Here's a little shot of the caliper clearance that we do. So you guys have seen all of that in our other videos. You can see where we machine off the very edge just to get clearance between the rim and the tire. If you have any issues with that, don't be scared to, if you have to, take a flap wheel and just take your time, put it in a vise, wrap it in a rag. Just be really, really careful as you're removing material. I mean, not everybody has a milling machine to do this. If you want us to do it, you can send us your caliper and we will take care of that for you, no charge. If you guys buy the kits from us, we will do that for you. When you guys install your front end, always double check your tension right here, because you're going to be actually compressing those stem bearings with that nut right there on the inside. Now, if you are going to adjust any of this, make sure you got the bike in the air. Leave your top pinch bolts loose on each side and leave that top nut loose. You want this to free float so that when you compress your stem bearings, you're not going to have any binding. So then you're going to actually work in there with a spanner wrench, or you can use a very small punch and just carefully tap that. I like to get it so there's a little bit of tension on the front end, left and right. I don't want the front end to bounce off the steering stop. If there's bounce, then it's definitely too loose. So that's something I do. So once I have that tension right, I then torque the stem nut to factory specs, and then I go out here and torque the outer pinch bolts also to factory specs. Pay attention to how you line your forks up. We try to keep them in the factory position. Now guys, don't be scared to play with your fork height as you're riding. If you want this thing to steer a little bit quicker and you're not worried about ground clearance, you can slide your forks up in the clamps. Same deal with the rear end. Play around with your suspension sag. It's simply just those adjustments right there, moving the spring up or down. That's gonna change the way it sits and feels. It really comes down to rider weight, so you should be tweaking that stuff anyway when you get the machine. But be mindful to, you know, make some minor adjustments on your suspension. I mean, play around with your clickers, play around with your fork heights. You'd honestly be surprised what a couple millimeters up or down does to the machine in terms of cornering. If you check out the video TRIKE motocross that we posted, it's unreal how they will handle if you just fine tune them. I guess another common question on swing arm install, we can go over that quick. We do have a separate swing arm install video. However, if you guys are having issues sliding your swing arm in after you've installed your bearings and your pivot tubes, make sure the inner tube, which is the one that touches all the way over to the motor, is all the way into the thrust bearings. If you don't have that seated all the way against the outer collar, it will restrict sliding in. Just something to pay attention to. We do have a provided linkage bolt that comes with the swing arm. And again, you're running your factory chain roller there, which is already mounted. Factory one there. Our chain guide, be careful over tightening these. These are a soft rubber. You don't want to over compress this, so a couple dabs of Loctite on the bolts and just a normal torquing of those bolts without over yarning on them is going to hold that just fine. If you guys are installing our sprocket guard, we have a separate video for that. Be sure to check that out. Pay attention to your brake line routing. I like to leave a little bit of slack here because as you guys adjust your chain and rotate the carrier back, it's actually going to pick the caliper up and move it back slightly. So just pay attention to that. Try to leave a little bit of slack, make sure it's not getting pinched in your spring. If you guys are having a hard time bleeding these, I recommend a power bleeder. Little trick, take this bolt out, pivot that caliper up, crack the bleeder. It's going to be a lot easier than trying to do it right here just because of the angle of these. The reason this is tipped back is, again, for caliper to exhaust clearance. So there's a lot to think about when you're setting these up. It's just what it is. But all you got to do is take that bolt out, pivot that caliper up when you're bleeding it, watch the piston come out. As soon as you see movement, put it back down, bleed it a couple more times as you're pumping that, and you'll instantly feel the pressure. And if you don't, try a power bleeder. It works awesome. Always use lots of grease in your carrier when you're sliding it into the housing. Same deal with all of these aluminum parts. Everything is a very tight tolerance. We do this so everything maintains rigidity. We don't want everything flopping around over time. So just apply grease on everything. Be really, really careful with that. Even on your clip here for your anti-fade, a little bit of grease on everything. Splines, spacers, everything goes a long way, especially if you ever pull the bike back apart. Here's an underneath shot of the battery box. There's a good shot of the two different sizes on the exhaust. Same deal on the Yoshis and the OEM. And again, guys, we leave these a little bit long just for the sake of having it tug on there. And here's another good shot of the foot pegs. You can see how we have a slight kick up right now. Well, guys, this video kind of kept going on and on. I guess there is a handful of things to talk about. Again, if you have any questions, just hit me up. It's really not too much else. Oh, we got our, I guess we can go over the thumb throttle. If you have a thumb throttle, you're gonna run the double spacer here. So you're gonna have your pinch on the outside, you're gonna have the other one flipped around. This spaces the master cylinder away from the throttle. If you have the piece sticking off the side of the throttle, which generally locates it from the factory, I like to cut those right off. It just gives me a little bit more movement here. So cable's gonna go right to your throttle body. It's pretty self-explanatory. I like to make sure the grip's all the way on and bottom to the end. Get that where I want it, then set the throttle, then set your brake angle. Same deal on the clutch side. You guys can play around with where you want your buttons. Always tuck all your wires behind everything just to keep it from snagging. I like to run these on the outside of the number plate just so there's no snagging. A couple of good zip ties on here. And this one's in progress, so I figured it was a good time to go over this whole deal. I guess that's pretty much it, guys. If you have any questions, shoot me an email. You can comment on this video. I apologize for it being a little bit lengthy, but I feel like these are the questions we've been getting a lot already by email. So easiest way for us is make a video. Okay, guys, we're gonna be heading out for the day. But again, if you receive our kit, you notice something's missing or missing some hardware, it does happen. We have had stuff get mixed up. We're human. I mean, we do make mistakes too. But we got tons of this stuff in stock, so if we have to overnight something to you or at least get it mailed out to you quickly, we can. So anything you need, we keep all the extra pieces in stock. Again, if you guys want to upgrade to this new bracket, it does have slotted holes and it's lower so that you don't have to cut the bushing down. This is the old style bracket. Just give you a rough idea. I'm sure it sounds a little confusing when I'm explaining it. So that's the old bracket next to the new one. So again, this newer one is lower. That allows you to keep this rubber in the OEM position while maintaining that exact same height. So it's just changes we've made over the last few years. This was a recent change as of a month ago. We've been shipping kits out with this for the last few years. So again, if you want to upgrade to this one and you just recently purchased a kit and you haven't cut your bushings yet, just let me know. We will send that out to you. And guys, I just want to say thank you for the support. We've been shipping kits all over the world. It's been unbelievable how busy we've been. You know, we're going to be doing the big wheels here shortly. We actually have a swing arm in the works, and of course we already have the front ends figured out. So once we get that going, we'll be posting about it. But in the meantime, if you guys have any questions, don't be scared to hit us up, bvctrikes@gmail.com. when we're after hours, that's the best way. It's just works for us. You can call us during the day, of course. My wife answers the phone. I'm usually tied up working. I mean, I'm going as fast as I can. We're very, very busy right now with the 5 of us running around, but you guys keep us crazy busy, which we really appreciate, guys. So hopefully you liked the video. If you have any questions, just let us know. So this will be the girl that's going to be answering the phone during the day.
Hi.
Yeah, just doing the how-to video. So you ready to head out of here?
Yeah.
Another long day?
Long day.
It's only 5:15.
I know.
Been here since what, 7?
Yes, I've been up since 4:30 though.
Oh, there you go. Overachiever you. Cool, guys. Talk to you later.